Hi, I'm Bill Arnold. Thank you for listening to this podcast. There are many more podcasts available at myfaithradio.com. Your support makes this possible. Thank you. Okay, it's time to begin. Let's start a countdown. 20, 19, 18, 17. I just start the song.
Oh, don't you know, it's the Bill Arnold Show. It's Bill.
And a warm welcome to the Bill Arnold Show. It is time for Counselor's Corner. I'm so looking forward to this. I've got Marcus Bachmann on the way up the stairs. I've got Jenita Pace and Todd Mulliken. And we are going to talk today about the trauma that can happen in church settings. Now, maybe trauma is a big word. Maybe I should call it church hurt, or maybe there's been some misunderstandings or a little bit of maybe even spiritual abuse. And it does create and can create some deep emotional and psychological problems. It can also cause people to say, I'm not going back to that church, or I have to find a new church, or rightly so. That's nothing wrong with that, but maybe you have stopped going to church altogether, and that's not good. So we're going to talk about that. Todd, Jenita, Marcus, welcome.
Thank you, Bill. Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Okay, this is such a big topic, and I don't know exactly where to start. So, Jenita, I'm going to look at you and say maybe you can get us on the track.
Well, you know, when I think of church hurt, as I see more and more clients that are coming and saying they've been hurt by the church, it seems like there's a really wide range of that. We have some people who come in and they've been hurt. It wasn't intentional. It doesn't mean that it wasn't hurtful or it wasn't done wrongly, but there was not there wasn't a nefarious purpose behind it, all the way to people who have been abused by a spiritual leader. So it seems like this runs the gamut, but one of the things I see regardless is people that are injured and sometimes feel God's abandoned them, or they decide they're not going back, they can't trust the church, and they miss a Christian community, so they're really torn.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious, have you felt isolated from an incident at church, or maybe you felt disconnected from your faith as a result of some hurt feelings you had through a church activity or something that went on in a church? I'd love to hear from you. We'd love to get your comment or your question, 877-933-2484. Again, 877-933-2484. It seems that statistically there's about 1 in 3 that have some unaddressed trauma or something as a result of a church experience.
What a sad reflection on the church in many ways, but we understand that the church is made out of sinful people. And so
Exactly.
There shouldn't be
Human institutions.
That's right. That's right. I think the real key is that we understand not to turn our hearts toward the creator of the church, the lover of the church, Christ, the church himself. And often we see that hurt just insulates people away from what is true and good. And then I'm sure we'll have the opportunity to talk about the enemy of the church that causes so much pain and so much hurt.
Mm-hmm. I appreciate that comment, Marcus, because it is true. Churches are human institutions. They're filled with sinners, and there can be things that are said that can be so hurtful, and it can cause not only stress or trauma in your life, but it can also keep you from continuing to worship, and that is the saddest of all. I mean, because they should be places of profound healing, but they can also inadvertently or maybe even deliberately, like you were saying, Jenita, be places of harm.
Yeah. I mean, I think, I don't know about the rest of you, but we even have our own stories as counselors. Like I've talked about before where when I was first diagnosed with depression, and the pastor that my husband was working for at the time felt that I had depression because I was living in sin. Mm-hmm. And so came to talk to me about how mental health is a result of a sinful problem. And that sent me on a long journey of trying to forgive him. And it didn't happen right away. And I wanted to forgive him. That was part of it too, is I wanted to just, get over it. But talk about a long process, because my husband lost his job and we had to relocate. And, but it was important that I give myself room to have those feelings about it. And then to realize that in that pastor's mind, he really believed he was helping me. I mean, he believed what he was saying. Mm-hmm. So he wasn't coming with a nefarious purpose. He honestly believed he was helping me.
Sincere people can hurt each other, even in the strongest belief that they're right, and yet they can be horribly wrong. And I think there's the story that needs to be heard and uncovered and healed in the process, whether with a trusted friend or a counselor. But often when there's an authority like a pastor figure, people shy away from, how can I trust anyone at this point? How certainly would I trust someone of any spiritual authority, let alone someone who claims to be a Christian counselor? So there's layers that's complicated in the process of someone who's been hurt and damaged by a church leader.
Mm-hmm. I've heard stories of people that say I had a physical condition and issue, and I was not getting healed. And the people at my church were telling me that I didn't have enough faith.
Yeah.
And it destroyed them. And so when something like that happens, what would be your response?
Well, I think we're hitting on an area that's really important to talk about, and I think the church is overall getting better at this, but I know when I started speaking on mental health issues, 30 plus years ago in church settings, there were certainly some times when I was viewed as, it was heretical to talk about mental health is like physical health, and physical health, we pray for all people, whether they have a mental health issue or a physical health issue, we get to do that. And we also get to seek people who are trained professionals who are trained in that area to get help. And the church, so one aspect of a healthy church is they will have that mindset and leadership where they will refer to healthy professionals that can treat those conditions. They will pray for that person. They'll have a pastoral care team to help, but they will have that implemented. And so that's one thing. I think it's a lane that we need to talk about a little bit. That are the churches viewing physical health and mental health issues the same way? Are they viewing it from a perspective of we get to have trained professionals in our community that are Christ followers that we refer to, so we have our good boundaries as a church? Because when we don't have that, we can have a couple of situations that were just brought up in here. And there are a lot of those.
Yeah, and to piggyback on when it comes to physical health too, you hear churches talk about, we're praying that they'll get healed, and they start to equate healing with faith and belief. But the Bible is full of promises that we're going to suffer. And I feel like sometimes churches are uncomfortable with long suffering for their members. And it's hard to represent God when God isn't healing someone. And so sometimes I feel like there's almost a panic in a church when someone continues to suffer.
Yeah.
Comment just came in on the text line. People think church hurt disproves God. I've got so many peers that won't consider faith even because of things they've only heard about. So they didn't even experience them. They just heard about it. Right. A friend or somebody they knew went through something at the church, and that contaminates their thinking.
Yeah. That's why I think it's always helpful to have that posture as a church, like we are human. So I'm always encouraged when a pastor is, sharing something and they're being a little a reasonable vulnerability about their own struggles, in ways that don't come off pharisaical. And I think that's always something that helps the church feel safe, is when church staff are, appropriately like, hey, I struggle with that too, or tell me more about that. Or when they're talking about it, they're giving a sermon, they're talking about a struggle they have in that area. You know what I mean? So there's a humility about it, there's a safety about it that creates a healthy environment. And that's what I know people who are deconstructing their faith, like I've invited different friends to come to our church currently that are deconstructing their faith. And I'm going, hey, I know you're deconstructing, but you want to just check it out and see what you think. And they have felt like, hey, that was helpful. It felt safe. I felt seen. I felt there was humility on the stage. And so I also think, there's an accountability for the church to do that and to do that as well as they can.
That's a pretty gutsy church that will actually say, welcome. This is safe for you to come even with all of your questions, all of your reservations. You can be deconstructing your faith, and you are welcome to talk to us. What a gutsy church. I like that kind of a church.
I do too.
And the truth is, I think, Todd, as you were saying, churches are moving in this direction. They have a focus on mental health. They have an understanding that we are not perfect people. We have made mistakes. We are sinners ourselves. Forgive us. And there's a perspective here that says, not only are people welcome, but we're not perfect. There's only one that is perfect.
How important is leadership in a church relative to this topic? When I think of a small group, and if someone in your small group is drawing all the oxygen from the room and everyone is starting to go, oh, this is what we talk about all the time. How important is leadership to say this issue is probably best addressed with a professional Christian counselor? How do you do that? How do you do that well?
Well, you just did it well right there.
Well, no,
you asserted. I think I've talked to you about we have passive behavior. The passive person would sit there and defer, and I'll pray about it. It'll be fine. The aggressive person will, fire ready aim and just cause a ruckus. You were assertive. You just called something out in an assertive way and created an invitation.
Do you know how uncomfortable I felt doing that?
I bet you did.
I'm a mess. I'm a mess right now.
Should we do some deep breathing?
Oh, really. I like that line. You're sucking the earth, the oxygen out of me. I think that, the rest of us in the group are saying, finally, someone said it.
But I want to be caring and loving, of course, but I also want it to be a place where other people interact as well and not somebody just focuses on their one thing. Now, I don't want them to leave going, well, they kind of put me in my place and I don't know if I feel comfortable sharing anything anymore.
Sure.
Yeah, it's not. I'm sure there's a delicate balance.
Right. Yeah. And you would probably circle back with that person.
I probably am. Right?
Invite them for coffee once they've left the church,
Other than that,
Call them in 6 months, find out how their new church is.
Right. They're not going to church, Bill.
I get very concerned about that because I have heard so many stories here at Faith Radio of people that say, this happened to me. And I'm shocked when I hear it. Some of it might come out of a rigid doctrine, or maybe there was some, institutional failure that went on or something. But what I've heard has been shocking.
Yeah.
And I feel terribly sorry for them. Yeah. So, all right, I should take a pause there. That's probably a good place to take a pause. We are enjoying the Counselor's Corner. I've got Todd Mulliken, Jenita Pace, and Marcus Bachmann, and we're talking about today church hurt or maybe spiritual abuse. And I know that's a sensitive topic, and maybe you're not comfortable sharing what happened, but if you are, we'd love to hear what you experienced and how you're doing getting over it and how you are on the other side. And I trust that God is helping you work through this. If you have a question or a comment, the text line is now open, 877-933-2484. We'll be right back. It is my deepest desire that you take the very first step of faith by placing your faith and trust in Jesus Christ. If you've got questions about what it means to begin a relationship with Jesus, text the word faith to 41224. So glad to have the Counselor's Corner today. I've got Todd Mulliken, Jenita Pace, and Marcus Bachmann. We're talking about a little bit of church hurt. Have you gone through church hurt? Maybe you are still in the middle of it, or maybe God got you through it and you're on the other side of it and you've got a little story to tell. And we want to make sure we can be as open, available to you as we can. We want to help you in your suffering, if that's where you're at. Here's another text that came in. A problem I had eventually led to a physical diagnosis after rounds of counseling by a professional Christian counselor who considered it a failure of discipleship. and he was an MD. I'm not sure if I know what that means. So,
Can you reread that?
yeah, a problem I had eventually led to a physical diagnosis after rounds of counseling by a professional Christian counselor who considered it a failure of discipleship, and he was an MD.
Yeah.
You guys understand that?
Well, I think it sounds like the danger, and I think as Christian counselors, we always have to make sure that we are not assuming everything is about mental or spiritual. I mean, we have to consider the person as a whole. And I do find that I get concerned sometimes when I talk to people who are spiritual leaders and they seem to, a hammer looking for a nail.
Sure.
That everything they look at, they think has to do with the spiritual or has to do emotional. And you're right, we do need to take into account that there's a lot of things that hurt people, and it could be physical.
Mm-hmm.
There's a place for Christian psychiatrists that can evaluate and assess the whole person, not only just the aspects of when there's a diagnosis that's mental health, but there's also including that is a physical portion. That medication management is a beautiful tool, is an access that we need to avail ourselves of. I'm sure that there's stories of people who have accessed it too much, given too much, and there's some that would say, yes, we've skipped an entire diagnosis that's chemistry related, that's physical related. But there is a balance in all of that, and the wisdom of understanding all of those aspects together is wise counsel.
Mm-hmm. Here's another text. My son was deeply hurt at 2 consecutive churches due to perceived rejection from a youth group. He hasn't attended church for 6 years. He feels this will happen wherever he goes.
Oh,
that is heartbreaking.
I know that breaks my heart, especially in the youth groups.
Yeah.
I feel like I've seen a lot of teens come in for counseling, and it was the youth group that really, I mean, they felt more accepted at school than they did when they went to the youth group.
Mm-hmm. If you have a story or a comment, I'd love to hear it. 877-933-2484. I know this is a sensitive topic, but I've got counselors here ready to address your concerns or questions. That would be great. Again, 877-933-2484. Here's another one. My sharing with my pastor, I asked him to keep our conversation in confidence. Shortly after that, his wife told me that they were praying for me, but the pastor never said another thing to me about it. I lost my trust in him because of that. Am I overreacting?
I think that, again, like going back to that feeling of safety, whether it's emotional, mental, physical, I think that it's important for pastors to recognize the burden they carry. So, yeah, if someone says some things in confidence, my husband was a pastor for a long time, and he didn't share with me what people were saying because the idea was that he was their pastor. I'm not the pastor. And so, yeah, I think that here's a pastor who's hurt someone who probably did not have any intention, but did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think if a pastor is asking permission, may I share this in prayer with my wife? That's a somewhat of a different story there. But, we're as counselors held to the HIPAA whole aspect of confidentiality. I'm sure each one of us here have had our spouse say, so-and-so came up to me at the grocery store and said, what a great counselor you are. His or wife or husband is. And my wife is looking at them like, A, I have no idea that you are counseling by my spouse, and B, I'm not even sure exactly how to react. But, our spouses often will know that when we're at the grocery store and someone comes up to us, our spouse just walks away, just kind of knowing that something's going on there that they're not supposed to be a part of. So kudos to our spouses that put up with our whole line of work and all of that. But confidentiality, absolutely trustworthy, foundational to the work that we do. It is, we keep the secrets. That's ours to do, unless they had a plan to hurt themselves or hurt somebody else. Confidentiality is our law.
I was going to follow up with that person just saying, I do think, I'm sorry, maybe I didn't hear the whole thing, but I've heard plenty of stories where I've encouraged that type of person to, from their own place of contentment in Jesus to share that experience with that particular pastor and just have a conversation from their own place of strength, not giving the power to that person, but rather from their own place of contentment in Christ, saying I was really hurt by what happened, and here's what really hurt me. And, then that's that opportunity for the pastor. Then we learn about, is that pastor's capacity to acknowledge, or, hey, thank you for letting me know that was not my intent and I blew it, that's on me, or acknowledging that creates a healing moment. And or if the pastor gets real defensive and guarded and, puts it right back on the person, that's another reason why, this person doesn't trust, right? So I do think when we address the mess as best as we can, that's sometimes that's a good move for us to make.
I love that, Todd. And I think isn't it beautiful that in our faith, all Christians are called priests? And so think of how much a humble pastor can learn from his congregants if that congregant is willing to say, this hurt me, and hopefully you look for that humble leadership that would come back and respond. I love that.
There's power in a person confronting the one that has hurt them. There's timing in all that, and there's some counsel that needs to be guarded in all of that process. But it is a healing that can happen in the ability to look into someone else's eyes and say, what you said, what you did was damaging, was hurtful. And there's a correction that the church needs to receive. Sometimes it's not always directly from that person. Sometimes you have to have someone come alongside with you. But rather than developing a gossiping approach of talking about this to everybody else, and sometimes it's done by written form, but I think there is a tremendous, powerful approach. Again, it's not entirely that simplistic, but the principle of directing the hurt toward the one that has hurt you is really important.
This is the Counselor's Corner. I've got Todd Mulliken, Jenita Pace, and Marcus Bachmann. We're talking about church hurt. And if that's something you have experienced and are willing to share your story, you can ask a question or make a comment. It is very welcome. 877-933-2484. Marcus, I know you grew up on a farm. What did you guys do on the farm? Were you a dairy farmer?
Dairy and beef.
Okay, dairy and
Holstein
beef.
cows.
Okay.
John Deere tractors.
All right. Because my next comment is something I think you can relate to. And it was my wife and I run a small family dairy farm in a rural area.
All right.
All the local churches have changed their meeting times to milking times mornings and evenings. We've noticed churches spend less and less time, people spend less and less time at church over the years. My wife grew up in a communist Romania and was in the persecuted church. There they met almost daily.
Wow.
Now we can rarely meet with other believers. We feel shut out.
Wow.
That's a different kind of hurt, isn't it?
Haven't we gravitated from church being Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday, Thursday, to let's get this over with in 45 minutes on Sunday. And by the way, why don't we just watch it online? So, okay, that probably wasn't necessary for me to say all that. But the point is, we need a dailiness of Jesus. We need the reading of his word, and we need the fellowship with other believers and the correction and the encouragement. And so whether we get that being physically in the church 2-3 times a week, or whether we do that on a dailiness in our own fellowship with our family and so forth, we need Jesus routinely to remind us of the love, the grace, the forgiveness, and the power that when we've been hurt, we can receive healing.
Yeah, it's funny. My son is in Bible college, and he came home the other night super excited to talk to me because he wanted to, talk about how the early church was house churches. And he blew his mind. And he said, Mom, isn't that an amazing model? Like, you could meet in churches and you could do community. And I said, that is actually a very good model, isn't it? Yeah. To have dinners together and to meet in homes. And I think you're right. We've made it an institution. And now if you don't have the meeting times available, that's sad.
Mm-hmm. If we get back to the model of the first century churches, I mean, the first 300 years, they met regularly in homes. They had meals. Yep. They had multiple people teaching. Mm-hmm. Nobody slipped through the cracks. Everyone were able to tell their story, and you could find out what was going on in their lives. There's something that's been lost, right?
I agree.
Yeah. Now I've heard the expression, it's oftentimes a Coldplay concert and a TED Talk.
That is
That's
powerful.
Fair. That's fair.
Fair. Well, it can feel that way.
Yeah.
You know, it's truth. It's down to the numbers and the minutes, and they've got to do all the production elements, and it doesn't feel quite as cozy and warm as it once did.
Personal, yeah.
I don't know if this story is going to be too constricting in some ways, but just recently I still have this dairy farm in Wisconsin, and
John Deere still, by the way?
Yeah, definitely, okay. Yes. And so my brother was not in church on Sunday, and I had a lady from the church call me and say, "Is everything okay with your brother?"
Wow, I love that.
And part of me was thinking, well, this is a little creepy. And the other part of it, I thought, this is the sweetest thing I've ever heard this week.
Absolutely. Yeah. They know right away if he's not there.
That's right. All 12 of them that go to that church.
All 12?
All of them, that's right.
Yeah. Do you have a story that you'd like to share or a question regarding church hurt? And when I say hurt, maybe there's been something that went on that hurt you emotionally or psychologically. Maybe there's even some spiritual wounds caused by something that was said or an experience you had. And like we've said, maybe their intentions were good, but nevertheless, you felt hurt. And the stats say 1 in 3 people in faith communities have some kind of unaddressed problem or issue or trauma. And sometimes we hide behind a little bit of a facade of, how are you doing? Oh, I'm blessed. And you have to wear your church face, don't you, to church?
Yeah.
Versus what happened to you? What's concerning you?
Yeah, I go back to I really like what you said, Todd, about the power of pastors being good representatives of brokenness. Mm-hmm. I think that if they can be vulnerable from the pulpit and show the congregation how to do it, that it's so important that we're authentic, that we're open, that we are available to share with others that we're not perfect. And I think the leadership modeling that is so powerful.
You know, as primarily a couples counselor, when I'll have a couple that will come in and they are in because a couple went in front of the church and said they've found Jesus and they don't have any issues anymore. That's really good for my business, by the way. Just kidding, because 80% of the couples are going like, hey, well, we don't, what's going on? And so it's always, it's so much more connecting when that couple in front of the church goes, we are so dependent now on Jesus, it's great. And we still struggle a lot. And that just makes Jesus tangible, Right. So I know we're hitting on a topic of kind of church authenticity and leading that way, but that also eliminates potential for hurt and violation, when the church has that type of healthy, confident humility from the pulpit. So
Transparency is really helpful. I think we have to be careful as counselors to not make sure our counseling session is at all too much about ourselves. But there is a place where we can even share with the person that we're counseling. I've struggled with that arena also. That isn't just shy of you. My marriage has never been perfect. And at the beginning of our marriage, we had the same kind of struggles. I identify with you. So shortly, or I should say briefly, sharing that can be helpful because guess what? I'm real, and I can be real in understanding your situation. It's helpful. We're
going to take a break and come back, but I'd love to get your question or comment for the counselors. I've got Todd Mulliken, Jenita Pace, and Marcus Bachmann here in studio with me, and we're talking about church hurt. Maybe there's been some even spiritual abuse. And what we want is we want you healed from this. We want you to make sure you are not dealing with these problems anymore. And if you can share what's going on, we'd love to try to address it. 877-933-2484. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the show. If you just joined us, it's the Counselor's Corner. We had a little bit too much fun there during the break, so I've got Todd Mulliken, Jenita Pace, and Marcus Bachmann here in studio. Although we're dealing with a very difficult subject today, it is church hurt or spiritual abuse or things that you are suffering from as a result of church. And this is, of course, churches are human institutions, and we're all going to have problems, and no church is perfect. They only have imperfect leaders and imperfect people there, so we're just wanting to encourage you to go to the source, which is Jesus Christ, for all of your healing. Here's a comment. Let's see. My wife struggles with going to church and getting connected. The Catholic Church would not baptize her son she had out of wedlock. We are in a Bible-believing church, but still has her guard up even after 30 years. Just not sure how to help her let that go.
Sometimes I think, and this is in the power of the audience here, just one person, not a whole group, not the whole church, but one person reaching out to that individual can help bring that guard down. It's a caring person. It's a person that's willing to listen. It's a safe person that will say, "Tell me your story, and I am so sorry that happened." And that building of a relationship, this is why your listening audience does this, Bill. It's reaching out to that one individual that's hurting and not only saying your story is important, but the unraveling of that story and the care that person can receive. There's a sense of a loving approach. That's the church reaching out one by one. And then as time goes on, maybe that person will say, "Would you like to come to a Christmas Eve service? It won't take long. I'll be with you. I'll sit with you, and we'll walk right out afterwards." Just a simple invitation, a simple approach, but we've developed a relationship with that person one-on-one. What a difference that can make.
Mm-hmm.
And that 30-year process she's in, for that particular, I love what Marcus said, that she's in, particularly the spouse is kind of walking alongside her during those years, and now they are at a different church. You wonder what it would be like for the spouse in a gentle kind of way, as he's validating all the feels she's had over the decades, to invite her to, let's talk to our current pastor about this and just break bread with him from our own place of, because I'm just sad. We want to have this child back, or whatever. We want to get over this slowly and in a healthy way. And sometimes, again, it's that invitation, it's that assertive move that can allow this pastor at this particular church to be a safe place. And now the past gets a lot quieter, And so it's sometimes, like Marcus said, it's the invitation. Sometimes it is the spouse walking alongside and making the ask and being there for her, and getting her to at least that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think about how, I work with horses, and when they've been mistreated in a specific way, there's a specific trauma, and then in order to have them recover, working with an animal, you see it's a step-by-step process. I mean, if it you can't jump to fix it, and it's very slow and deliberate and one thing at a time. And it occurred to me one day that I've seen that in my own heart, that when I have an injury, if the pastor looks similar to the Catholic priest, that, everything could matter, little details that he might not even know. And so I just wish I could hug this woman. I can feel the pain in that text, and encouraging him, women might be a good choice. Maybe it's engaging in those friendships and step by step coming to a place where she feels like she can even just whisper the fact that this happened. I think it's going to be so gradual, and the triggers might be surprising.
Yeah, and we want to validate the triggers that are happening too, right? But it's not a step back when she is continuing to feel triggered and wounded, right? That's a validation of the experience and that's one of the most common triggers really is that hyperarousal trigger as well as the numbing, avoidance, pushing down trigger. Those are two of the most common trauma triggers. So validating that all the way along with the friend, talking to somebody about that is huge. It's huge.
Yeah.
I would imagine one of the problems out of church hurt or some kind of abuse would be that you would have difficulty trusting anybody in the authorities figures or any of the pastoral staff, if that's the case.
That's why I think congregation members can be not as strong of an authority figure. And so I'm your friend. I want to get to know you. And I'm not wearing or coming across as the authority figure in your life. And that can be powerful, healing in just the most simple ways. And sometimes it's the most common, if I can use that word, common person that is able to reach across the line of ministering to that individual. That's why I think when I talk to people about your ministry, and that's really a strong part of what this healing process is about. God has called us to a ministry, each one of us. And our ministry, if we are in whatever position we are, whatever occupation we are, whatever role we have, male or female, young or older, and all of it counts toward being able to minister to the right person. If you are asking God for a ministry today, I believe God will show you the person that is hurting, that has been hurt by the church, that you can be a key in their healing process.
Well said, Marcus Bachmann. Any other comments there on that in that department?
No, I think he's nailed it. The power of social support is proven over and over again as a key to health, right? And the area of social support is, and there's a lot of us in the church that. I know at our church we do this once a month thing where we get to welcome each other, and the pastor always says, "And introverts, we're going to keep the back door locked, so just have fun with it."
Yeah,
and we connect, and sometimes it's even it's just this powerful like buzz in the church, but people are connecting, and big church gets small, and sometimes it's in those interactions that the follow-up can happen that Marcus is talking about, too. It's getting comfortable being for the other in that kind of setting. It's wonderful. So, yep.
What about when you get judgmental language and you go, well, boy, that felt very judgmental. You're not saying that out loud, but you're saying it on the inside, and you're in a lot of pain as a result.
I think a strong person who's going through the healing process and can say it just the way you are thinking, Bill, there's power in that. I mean, it would take quite a strong individual to be able to say that. The way that you're speaking to me feels like judgment. I'm not comfortable with that.
Wow, I like that. Well done.
Turn it back.
Yeah.
And probably add a few more words than just that. But I think there is value in saying what you're thinking, what you're feeling when someone uses that kind of language.
Yeah.
Listen, the very best, at least, is that you recognize it. And you're processing it with right thinking. That is not judgment. That is...
healthy self-awareness.
Yes. God's not calling me to that judgment.
Right.
Unfortunately, that person is, but, and whether I confront them or not, which I hope they do, there's a recognition that's very healthy.
Is what you said, Marcus, what I learned in grade school.
Oh, no.
I'm rubber, you're glue. Whatever you say bounces off me and sticks on you. Come on, that's worth something.
Look at that little. I haven't heard that.
I need to write that down.
Well, no,
I like that one.
I haven't thought of that in 50 years.
Marcus, is that what you were thinking as the next sentence to say?
Well, it works.
So
it works.
So good, Bill.
It works at a lot of levels, doesn't it? All right, I think I should take a break, and then hopefully when I come back, I still have guests. It is the Counselor's Corner. I've got Todd Mulliken, Jenita Pace, and Marcus Bachmann. We'll be right back. If you have a story or an episode or something where there was some church hurt or there was some judgmental comments that were made to you that were hurtful and you felt triggered and you didn't want to go to church anymore, we would love to hear how we can come alongside you and encourage you. 877-933-2484. We carry each other's burdens. Please know you can bring us your prayer concerns and we will pray. Share your prayer requests with the Faith Radio team by texting or calling 877-933-2484 or share your prayer requests with the Faith Radio staff and listeners at myfaithradio.com. Thanks for joining me today. It is the Counselor's Corner, a time I always enjoy because I get to gather with amazingly bright, smart, godly people that have lots of experience in counseling. I've got Todd Mulliken, Jenita Pace, and Marcus Bachmann, and we've been talking today about hurt that can happen in the church. And maybe you've had an experience where you realized that you were not maybe treated kindly or in a way that was supportive, and you felt wounded, and then you ended up leaving. And, you know, one of the things that comes with leaving a church is this sense of isolation for a period of time.
Yeah.
Where you don't feel like you fit in anywhere. And then you kind of, well, maybe you feel sorry for yourself. Maybe you not go to church for a while. And that's not good.
Yeah.
Doesn't it seem like that is exactly from the handbook of the enemy?
It sure does.
He wants to isolate us. He wants to have us receive wrong thinking about ourselves and our future. And, you know, there's a hopelessness in that. And that's the enemy's territory. I think we have to be really aware. The enemy's at work. We don't want to give him too much credit, but we also want to recognize the dangers. And when it comes to our own personal hurt from the authority figure of a church figure, that is where we have to say, where's the enemy in all this? Let not him be the one to be in charge of my day.
Yeah, I think that it's powerful that Jesus uses sheep as an analogy for humans. And we know that sheep are herd animals. They live in community. That's how they stay safe, is they stay in community. And you're right, predators will pick off the one that is alone. So I think it's just tragic. And I understand why they're isolating. I get that. Mm-hmm. And yet at the same time, I know they need help. I mean, one resource that I encourage people to reach out to is Stephen Ministers. Churches train these people to just be really good listeners. The curriculum is really great. And sometimes that's a safe way to segue back in because you're just meeting with one person and they're there to listen. I mean, I think that we do need that community, but I understand it's hard to get back in.
That's a good bridge. It is. A lot of churches have those care ministry teams, and those folks are trained to not fix, but just to listen well and to validate and to create safety, which sometimes can be a good bridge.
But again, I think we have to be really mindful that each one of us, whether we find a church and find a pastor or find a Christian counselor or an authority, we have to be wise and test. Is this person helping? Is this person doing the right thing in my counseling session, in my time with them? Or is there something not right here? And we line that up with God's word. Is it true? Is it good? Is it from above? Is it the wisdom of God? Or is it another approach that listen, when I get my car fixed, if it's not fixed right, I've got another dealership to go to. I've got another church. I've got another pastor. Not that we lightly take that, but there are choices out there. And we're to be careful to judge and protect our lives in the process of our own healing.
How do we best recover if we're still holding on to something or there's been something that has given us some wound or some trauma from a past experience? And maybe it's 10, 20, 30 years later, we're still dealing with it at some level. How do we surrender this? How do we bring it to the throne room and say, Lord, here it is. I need to leave it here permanently. It's probably easier said than done. I'm a radio host. You guys are the counselors.
No pressure.
No pressure there.
Well,
I can ask Wyatt, too.
Hi,
What
Wyatt.
do you think, Wyatt?
No, I'm passing on that one.
I do think a trusted friend is a good place to start, just to open up that volley. I think if, in your friend group, if you know somebody that had a really good experience with a counselor, I do think going to a trained counselor that works in that area can be a wonderful gift. To Marcus's point, we need to be selective, but a trusted friend is sometimes a good place to start, and also creating that bridge for counseling can be really a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think part of the journey, too, is finding even a redemptive element. If you're able to articulate your story and you're able to walk through it, even write it out, figure out the pieces that still hurt, and understand that eventually you could be the person helping someone else that is walking through that very same thing. I think, so for me, part of the journey of overcoming the hurt with that pastor years ago was 15 years of working through forgiveness, working through letting go of my anger, letting go of the, that was wrong and that was hurtful. And then segueing into how could I powerfully use that to help others. And that for me was redemptive, to have a meaning to it. Otherwise it just feels like it was hurtful and wasteful.
Now you're defined by who you are becoming versus what happened to you.
Yeah.
Powerful. That's wonderful.
Oh, what a beautiful thing for God to use that.
Oh, my.
And ministering to someone else who's hurt.
Yeah.
There is redemption in all that. And I think, God has given us a memory bank. I think sometimes we confuse the fact that we still remember as if there's something wrong with that. No. I know there's this faulty therapy where you change history of what has happened to you. The truth is it happened to you.
Yeah.
And God has gifted us with that memory bank. Forgiveness and healing can still be yours, but the memory, the scar, if you feel a scar on your skin, it's still there. It's not forgotten. So I think we need to be careful of misunderstanding forgiveness and memory and the ability that God has a future for us, including the future of our healing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I love what you said. And I think for me, it was also freeing to realize that Jesus tells us to forgive, but he doesn't give a time frame on that. He doesn't say forgive in a minute or forgive in an hour. So if it takes you 15 years, it doesn't mean you're sinning. You're actively working. And I think I needed that freedom because people will slap. You just need to forgive. But God did not say there's a time frame on that. So if you're listening and you're struggling, yes, it'll take time.
Give yourself grace.
Give yourself grace. Give yourself
Tons
time.
of grace, yeah.
And if there's someone that you need to forgive, you can't wait around for them to come to you and say they're sorry, because that may never happen, right?
Yeah.
No, I mean, and it struggled because this pastor, his church grew. It was successful. And I want to say that I was super forgiving and hoped the best for him, but I was mad.
Right. Right.
I wanted, you know what I'm saying?
Totally.
It's hard because we have this good versus evil and justice, and it's hard to let that go.
Forgiveness with boundaries.
Yeah.
We certainly don't have to become friends with the one that has done such damage.
Right.
There's a lot of different ways that the process of forgiveness happens.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's our call to forgive eventually, but you're right. The timing, the way, is. I think our openness to the Spirit of God teaches us. He gives us the right timing. He gives us the right way and the right people to process. Just listening and being obedient to God's will leads us to the place of full recovery.
Mm-hmm. It means a lot to me that you say yes to this invitation. Thank you very much for agreeing and being here today.
Of course.
Thank you.
It's an honor.
It's an honor.
Yeah, it really is.
You're nice to say that. That's the show we have for today. Thank you so much for joining. I appreciate you, and thank you for supporting me and Wyatt here and everyone at Faith Radio. sure care about you and love you, and there's nothing you can do about that. So have a great night. I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for listening. Programming like this is made available through your support. Information available at myfaithradio.com.